The mind is an amazing thing, and now we are going to explore how the phenomenon of overthinking that we have discussed earlier actually occurs in the mind. To understand how it occurs, I would like you to take a look at the diagram below, or for those of you who are watching this video book, to the diagram which is on your right side. As you will notice, the diagram consists of a rectangle which is divided into segments, period. The horizontal axis, you will see the rectangle is divided into past, present, and future, period. The vertical axis, you will see that it is divided into absurd, reality-based, and possible. Now, each of the circles that you see in the rectangle represent a thought, period. So let me further explain this diagram so that you can understand overthinking in a very systematic and scientific way, as if we were studying a physical entity like the movement of the planets in the universe. So you will notice that in this diagram there are there are four different colors of thoughts, each representing different thought cycles, period. Now, before the mechanics of overthinking, let me try to explain to you the legends that represents various types of thoughts. Let me start with the vertical axis, period. So what this is saying is that thoughts can be categorized into three types, namely absurd, reality-based, and possible. Now, some thoughts are absurd, meaning that they make no sense and there is zero fact based on that thought or the possibility of it happening. You can say it's ludicrous or total nut house case, but still it is a kind of thought that people harbor, period. Then there is the reality-based thoughts, which are somehow more possible and likely, rational, logical. And when we talk about those thoughts to people, they make sense. Finally, the third category is the possible type of thoughts, which are not real, but they are not absurd either, and they make pretty much sense, so they are possible. There is some likelihood for them to occur. Either they can be positive or negative, that's another matter, but they are neither absurd nor based on reality. The next type of thoughts are thoughts based on the timeline, which is represented by the horizontal axis here. So some of our thoughts are based on the past experiences, either for good or for bad, or positive, negative, relevant or irrelevant, but they are from the past. Then there are thoughts that are based on the current situation, the present. Again, they can be positive or negative, good or bad, it doesn't matter. It just matters that they are about what is happening now around us, period. And then the third category is the future based thoughts, which are about things that have not happened, that could happen, or that we are concerned that might happen or might not happen in the future. Yeah. So this is the future-based type of thoughts. Now that you have understood the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, what you have to understand is that any of the thought bubbles that you see will have the coordinates of any of the three types in both the horizontal and the vertical axis. For example, let's look at the thought cycle number 1, and let's look at the big green circle, which belongs, as you can see, in the thought category of absurd and future. So this particular thought that this person is harboring at this moment is about something that's not happened in the future, and at the same time it's something totally absurd that this person might be ashamed to tell to others, being it's so ridiculous. Now you'll see that there is an arrow going from this thought towards to a smaller green circle. Now that's another small circle which is again based on the future and is reality based, period. So now you have understood that the thoughts belong to one of the boxes here and have got a property related to one category type in the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. So now that you have understood how this diagram was made and how to read it, let's actually understand how thoughts or overthinking occurs. So it starts with the red circle with one original thought. So everybody begins with a thought in their minds, nothing bad, nothing good, nothing serious, and they're just thinking that they are having some quiet time, reflecting or contemplating or thinking, whatever they call that process, that activity that's going on inside of them, period. So you see that red circle. Now, what happens in overthinking is that from this red circle, other thoughts will come. Like here, you can see an arrow going to the green circle that we talked about earlier, the thought cycle number one. So, and then at the same time, in a short while, another thought comes, which is brown thought, as you can see, and another thought comes, which is the yellow circle, and another thought comes, which is the blue circle. Now, this is the first layer of thoughts that this person is having, but it might not be limited, or it will not be limited to that. So let's continue with a thought cycle. For example, this person was thinking of a green thought, and then this green thought led to another green thought, then to another green thought, which is in the upper box, and then again goes to the lower box with a bigger thought. And here the size means the length of time spent on that thought, then goes back to the smaller thought, and in this way there's a thought cycle occurring here. Similarly, in the thought cycle 2, the blue one, it starts with the thought cycle which is from the which is nearest to the original red circle, and it goes to the another blue circle, then to another blue circle within the same box, and to the other blue circle in another box here, which is represented by past and absurd coordinates, then back to the original thought, and again creating a thought cycle. Now the third thought cycle, which is the yellow one, as you can see, it starts from the original thought, and it goes into the yellow thought, which is in the possible and past coordinates, going to another thought, and yet another thought, and this time going back to the again to the original thought. Now imagine this person doesn't know, that is not able to plot his or her own thought cycle, and that would be a big problem. Just in case you get confused, let me repeat again what happens here. So it starts with the red circle in the center, which is the original thought, the starting thought from which everything begins. Then it goes into the thought cycle number one, the green one. Then this green thought leads to another thought, which leads to another thought, which leads to another thought, which comes back to the second thought. Now, similarly, in the thought cycle 2, the blue cycle, the first blue cycle thought leads to another blue thought, which is now in the absurd and present category, smaller one, then into another thought, which is in the same category, then into the next thought, blue cycle, going back to the original one, and thus another cycle. Then the third thought cycle, the yellow one, similarly following a cycle. And the fourth thought cycle is a shorter one, just two thoughts. One is in the same reality based and present as the original thought, and it goes into the present and possible box, and it ends here for this thought cycle number 4, period. Now, what you have to understand is this is how thinking occurs in our brains, but people don't know it. people cannot plot their thoughts the way I've described it. And as a result, this creates a very negative sensation in the brain. And that's why people say that they don't like overthink because it hurts their brain. And we'll see how it hurts their brain later on in the symptom category, symptom section later on. So, this is how overthinking is occurring. Now, let me illustrate with one example, otherwise it'd be too long, but I think you got the point. Let's say that the original thought was for a student, the red thought was the exam is near and I must study. So far, so good, right? Great. And then he thinks about his friends. Let's say it's the thought cycle number one. Then he also thinks about his care. That would be let's say thought cycle number two. Then at the same time, he's also thinking about a possible relationship that he's planning or he wishes he could have. That would be thought number cycle number three. And then is thinking about whether to go on a social media site and have some dopamine fun. Now, you see, just as he's about to study, he's already got four thought in his mind, and he doesn't know it. He doesn't know that it's connected to the original thought of red. So that's already creating a burden. And now what is happening is, in a short while, the green cycle thought, where he was thinking about his possibility of, passing the exam, he thinks, what if he fails? That would be second thought, maybe. Or and after that would like, what if he failed and he couldn't, he everybody, make a mockery of him? That would be a terrible situation. He'd be so embarrassed. So that would be one thought cycle, and he'll be losing himself there. Now, in the third cycle, in the second cycle, he'll be thinking about what if his friends could come over and he could have some outing that he could go with his friends. Then he thinks, where should they go? Should they go to watch a movie, or should they go for a cup of coffee, tea, or should they all just, talk tomorrow? Period. So that would be another thought cycle. Then in the third cycle, he would be thinking about his future. What if he didn't succeed? What if he became poor? What if he couldn't earn enough money? Oh, that would be a disaster. And how to make more money? What if his friends have more success in his than he has? Period. And about his phone talk. What if he just talked on the social media, or consumed some feeds, reels? And you see what happens. His original thought that yes, I came here to study is over, and his mind is totally scattered everywhere. Now, in this case, we're just talking about four thought cycles, and in some cases, it could go to 10 thought cycles. Now, that will be overwhelming because the mind is not able to see it in this big picture view that I'm showing to you. So, that is the reason people hate the process of overthinking, because it hurts their brains. Now you understand how overthinking occurs. As you have understood why it is so hard for us to control overthinking, it is because there are just too many things to control, and our focus is limited to one or two, maximum three thoughts. But when they are like, even in this diagram, we have about 12 to a dozen thoughts here. So it's very difficult to control, period. Now let's discuss the next questions about overthinking. After watching the diagram and listening or reading my explanation, you will be wondering, is that so complicated? The simple thing that I've been calling overthinking? The answer is yes, it is so complicated, but through this diagram, I've made it so simple for you to understand the nature of your problem, period. Now, I want to explain to you in which situations this overthinking process occurs mostly, and who are more prone to overthink.